Hey, everybody, this is Crystal O'Connor, your host for Bullet Talk Radio. This is episode 4, and it's also the first episode after New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. So I'm really hoping that your New Year's Eve was awesome or uneventful, which some people consider to be awesome, and also that it was safe. That's always a major concern around a major holiday, especially New Year's Eve. So I'm hoping that your New Year's Eve was fun and awesome and safe. Mine was. I went out to the other side of my wonderful state of Pennsylvania to visit my father and my sisters and my brother, and had a really nice time. And we were safe. I didn't do any drinking. I was the designated driver, but I also had a 3-year-old in my car. So I was being responsible. Let's jump right into the news, and we're going to start with a story hailing straight from my own home state, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is sending a strong message to municipalities saying, you can't do that. What exactly is that? Well, municipalities, counties, other locales are not permitted to pass firearm ordinances or regulations. That is reserved as a right through the state. If you want something changed that's gun related, you need to do that through the state. This is something called preemption. Many states have it, but Pennsylvania, even the NRA agrees, has one of the strongest preemption laws in the country. Section 6120 of our Title 18 reads, limitation on the regulation of firearms and ammunition. General rule, no county, municipality, or township may in any manner regulate the lawful ownership, possession, transfer, or transportation of firearms, ammunition, or ammunition components when carried or transported for purposes not prohibited by the laws of this Commonwealth, because Pennsylvania is a Commonwealth. We actually recently strengthened our preemption law, and this was done via House Bill 80. It will take effect in January 5th, and basically what the citizenry asked for and what the House, Senate, and Governor gave us was some recourse against municipalities, counties, locales who were insisting on continuing to create these regulations and ordinances on the local level, which goes against our law of preemption in the state. This became very prolific with regards to lost or stolen ordinances. A lot of the anti-gun groups, particularly in our state, Ceasefire, really was trying to push the lost or stolen ordinances on our local governments because, frankly, they couldn't get it passed at the state level. They failed there, so they went to the municipalities, and the gun groups and the citizenry stood up and said, no, honey. No, see, you're not allowed to do that. So many of us, myself included, went municipality to municipality to municipality as their councils were voting on these regulations and saying, you're actually not allowed to do that. Some of the solicitors would concur with us and tell their councils, yeah, you guys, you can't go there. Some solicitors were, well, frankly, too political and too anti-gun and just didn't care. We also had several mayors who were members of the Mayors Against Illegal Guns, and they were going to do whatever they darn well pleased. We went to our legislators and said, guys, we need some recourse here. These locales are passing laws that aren't legal. They're not even allowed to do this, and yet they are doing this. How can we put the kibosh on them, basically? And that's what our House Bill 80, which our Governor Corbett did actually sign, and frankly, I've not been terribly thrilled with Governor Corbett. That's a whole nother ball game, but I'll give it to him here. He did pass this. And what it says is Title 18 is amended, and the section is amended by adding subsections to read: limitation on the regulation of firearms and ammunition. Relief: a person adversely affected by an ordinance, a resolution, regulation, rule, practice, or any other action promulgated or enforced by a county, municipality, or township, prohibited under subsection A or 53 PACS section 2962G, relating to limitation on municipal powers, may seek declaratory or injunctive relief and actual damages in an appropriate court. Reasonable expenses: a court shall award reasonable expenses to a person adversely affected in an action under subsection A2 for any of the following. A final determination by the court is granted in favor of the person adversely affected. The regulation in question is rescinded, repealed, or otherwise abrogated. Abrogated after suit has been filed under subsection A2, but before the final determination by the court. Definitions. As used in this section, the following words and phrases shall have the meanings given to them in this subsection. Dealer includes any person engaged in the business of selling at wholesale or retail of firearm ammunition. Firearms: this item shall have the meaning given to it. Section 5515, relating to prohibiting of paramilitary training, but shall not include air rifles, as that term is defined in section 63. A resident of this Commonwealth who may legally possess a firearm under federal and state law, a person who otherwise has standing under the laws of this Commonwealth to bring an action under subsection A2, a membership organization in which a member is a person described under paragraph 1 or 2. Political subdivision: the term shall include any home ruled charter, municipality, county, city, borough, incorporated town, township, or school district. Reasonable expenses includes but is not limited to attorney fees, expert witness fees, court costs, and compensation for the loss of income. So any citizen in the state of Pennsylvania and anyone who is a member of an organization such as a group I was a member of and actually sat on the board with, Firearm Owners Against Crime. So despite the amendment to allowing citizens and groups to hold these locales' feet to the fire, Harrisburg is refusing to change its ways and is heading to court because groups are, in fact, suing them. Those groups include the American Gun Owners Alliance, Concerned Gun Owners of Pennsylvania, Firearm Owners Against Crime, and Pennsylvanians for Self-Protection. They have retained attorney Joshua Prince, which if you are a PA resident or pay attention to PA politics and you've been watching the gun fight happening here in the last several years, you probably have heard the name of Joshua Prince. He is a staunch Second Amendment and firearms for citizens advocate here in the state. So I'm hardly surprised that that is who they retained. He's a good guy and he's good at his job. So hopefully he can get some leverage there in Harrisburg. And Harrisburg had passed a lost or stolen regulation, and that's why these groups are going after Harrisburg, because they passed a firearm specific, I believe they actually passed a few others as well, but they have some specific ordinances on the books that violate preemption. And because of this amendment that Pennsylvania put through, strengthening their preemption clause, it is now allowing these groups to go after Harrisburg and saying, no, you're not allowed to do that. Now, other municipalities throughout Pennsylvania are already striking these ordinances off their books. So somebody somewhere realizes that they were wrong and we were right. And it was just by passing this particular piece of legislation. The mayor says that the city is not going to repeal its ordinances because our police department feels that they are in the public interest, and I do too, Pepinfuse said. Well, I don't really care what you or your police department thinks. The law is the law, And you can't go out there prosecuting and holding up ordinances that frankly carry no weight because they're not legal. You just can't do that. That's like if a police officer in the state of Pennsylvania, where open carry is perfectly legal, walks up to somebody who's open carrying and disarms them and says, you're not allowed to carry that firearm, and I'm going to take your firearm and I'm going to charge you with this, that, and the other because I feel like it. Well, no, that's not how this works. Sorry, Mayor, but you're wrong. And your city's already broke. So being sued is not exactly in your citizens' interest. But if you don't live in Pennsylvania and you have a state that has preemption, keep a close eye on this. Go take a look at our bill that was passed. I'll have the links up in the show notes. Keep a close eye on this and think about it. It might be something you want to ask your legislators to continue to consider doing in your state. Next up on the list, the Federal Appeals Court has ruled against EPA for regulating lead bullets. In a decision favorable to gun enthusiasts, the U.S. District Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit said Tuesday that environmental groups have suggested no way in which the EPA could regulate spent lead bullets and shot without also regulating cartridges and shells. The Toxic Substances Control Act exempts cartridges and shells from regulation. Now, this is a quote from a Fox News article saying that environmentalists were trying to force the EPA to regulate spent lead bullets and shot used in hunting and shooting sports. So there's that. Link to the article will be in the show notes. And if you're not aware, you can always find full show notes of every single episode, links and all, up at bullettalkradio.com. Next on the list, pot smokers want Second Amendment rights. Now, this comes from the denverpost.com. Colorado pot smoking citizens want the guidelines set by the U.S. Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, or lovingly known as the ATF, to be amended to remove the question of whether the applicant for a concealed carry permit utilizes marijuana from the permit application. Now, the argument here is marijuana use is now legal, at least in that state. So if I can get my license without answering whether or not I've ever been drunk in my life or ever plan to get drunk in my life, why on earth can I not apply for a license or permit to carry without answering the question of whether or not I am high or plan to get high through the use of marijuana? Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that smoking weed is the best thing you could possibly do for your body. It's obviously not. Getting drunk is not exactly the best thing for your body. Obviously not. Personally, I understand where they're coming from. It's a question as to whether or not you plan to become inebriated via a legal drug, whether it's marijuana or alcohol, and that affects your ability to obtain a CCW. I'm going to side with them on this one. My libertarian colors are showing through on this one, and I'm sure many in the audience would agree with me, and I'm sure many of you in the audience would disagree with me. So do me a favor, hit me up on Twitter, Facebook, Google+, over at bullettalkradio.com, or radio@bullettalkradio.com by email, and let me know, what do you think about this? What do you think about whether or not the application for CCW should include the question of whether or not the applicant smokes pot or not? I want to know. Next on the list, Canada rejects UN Arms Treaty. So if you aren't aware, the UN Arms Treaty that we were all up in arms about a year and a half ago or so, has now come to pass. It's gone into effect, though the U.S. has not ratified and likely will not ratify the treaty. Our White House made no bones about going ahead and signing the treaty, which is awesome, but if the Senate doesn't ratify it, then too bad. So there are pieces of the treaty that are already in place. There are pieces of the treaty that are required that we're just never going to do. It's just not going to happen. But that's us. Canada, however, has said thanks but no thanks, claiming that they will only sign treaties that are good for Canada, good for Canadians, and I quote, "It is important that such a treaty should not affect lawful and responsible firearms owners nor discourage the transfer of firearms for recreational uses such as sport shooting and hunting. We'll make sure that any treaty we sign onto is good for Canada and good for Canadians." Good job, Canada. The only way that statement could have possibly been made better is if you included "and self-defense." But I'll take my lumps where I can get them, right? Next, and this is where the show title comes from, the "just because you can doesn't mean you should." This has been my mantra all week. I can't even tell you how many times I have said that line to the people I talk to every day. Pleading to women. If you hear nothing else in my episode today, please hear this, ladies. Please, please, please do not purse carry. With more and more women getting into the shooting sports, getting carry permits and carry pistols, more and more holstering gadgets are becoming available to make carry easier for women. Now, I reviewed a holster earlier this year called the Maryland Bra Holster, which I absolutely despised. I wore it for the length of the time that I needed to do the review, and it has been in my closet untouched ever since. It is totally a gadget. If you want to read the review, it's up on bullettalkradio.com/Maryland-bra-holster, or if you just go under product reviews, it's right there. As a woman, carry is more difficult and more of a delicate matter than it is for men. Guys, I know you like to say wear a bigger shirt, but the fact of the matter is you don't like it when we do. I mean, just look at how many people watch the Victoria's Secret fashion show every year and then tell me you're perfectly okay with me looking like I draped a garbage bag over top of my head. Right, ladies? I'm not a fashionista, but I do like to look good. But I also like to be safe. The two should not be mutually exclusive. But you also have to be smart when you're carrying your gun. That means sometimes you really do have to make a compromise with yourself as to what gun you're going to carry, as to whether or not you're carrying extra mags, as to the holster that you're using, as to the placement of that holster, and as to the clothing that you're wearing with it. Even something as simple as, I am a runner. So how am I going to holster my gun when the pants that I'm wearing are all elastic and there are no belt loops or anything like that to be seen? I'm going to be doing a review on one such product at the end of January, so stay tuned. But whenever you are going to carry for different situations, and I carry 3 different guns depending on the situation, whether it's cold or hot out, depending on the clothing that I'm wearing, the holster that I would be most comfortable wearing in that situation, even where I'm going. If it's a more dangerous area, I'm probably going to want more boom. Yes, all of those things are items I consider when I'm getting dressed in the morning and determining which gun I'm going to strap on, which holster, and where. But you also have to remember the major rules of gun safety, right? Your muzzle always has to be pointed in a safe direction. That's one of the things that I don't like about the Maryland holster and these other bra style holsters, is how you have to draw the gun. If you can even get to the gun, where is the muzzle as you're drawing the gun? You know, is it a cross draw type situation, in which case you're drawing right across your chest, right across your heart? That just makes me nervous. The gun is always loaded. This is just, the gun is always loaded. Period. The end. Consider what is beyond your target, not just your target. Finger off the trigger. You need to be able to put the gun into the holster and pull it out of the holster and keep your finger off the trigger. As far as holstering is concerned, making sure the holster that you choose is able to protect that trigger. It should cover the trigger guard so that something's not going to accidentally get stuck into that trigger guard and pull the trigger on your behalf. For holstering, I would add another rule of gun safety to that list. And that is, the gun must be on your person if you are carrying. You might think, well, duh, where else is it going to be? Well, my purse, maybe? So with it, as long as I have been carrying, there have always been purses for carry, but in the last few years there has been a major boom in gun holstering purses, and they are purses that have a pocket specifically, usually with a holster sewn into it for your gun. But here's the thing, a purse is not on your person. You can put it over your head and strap it around your chest and have it attached to you, but it's still not the same thing as being a part of your clothing. Most women that I see walking around at that don't strap their purse over their head and across their chest. It's on their shoulder. So how easy is it for that purse to be stolen? In which case you just armed your thief. You go to the restroom. You set your purse down. Maybe you hang it on the hook or you set it on the floor. You sit down at the dinner table with your family, even if you're out to eat. This is the one I'm always guilty of. And you set it next to you, next to your chair, or on the chair next to you. So it's not attached to you. This is a problem. You can't control it. You don't feel it. You're not intimately aware of the firearm itself because the firearm is not a part of you. So where is this rant coming from? Well, a 29-year-old mom in an Idaho Walmart was carrying her firearm legally. She has a concealed carry permit in a purse which was made for purse carry. Her 2-year-old son opened up the pocket that the gun was in, found the gun, pulled it, and pulled the trigger. He shot her in the head and killed her. My utmost sympathy, prayers, and condolences go out to the family. This is a tragedy. This is an absolute tragedy. And I do not mean this spot to be about pointing the finger and saying, she was wrong. Until I really started thinking about it, I put my gun in a purse too. And there are many women out there who put guns in their purses. So I'm not going to sit here and point the finger. That's not what this is about. This is more a PSA, a pleading, even if you decide you are going to still do so, please think very heavily about doing so. Think about how easy it is for a pickpocket to pick a pocket. So you're in a Walmart shopping line and your kid's tugging on your shirt, mommy, 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 and they're reaching into the purse to try to pull out a goodie, and instead they come out with a gun. I carry my gun unlocked and loaded. You do this for a few reasons. I've, through several of my shooting instructors, they tell you always carry in the same condition. Well, I can't always carry in the same place every time because I'm a woman and the styles of clothing change, and I don't always have access to a belt with hoops and the ability to put a holster on my pants. So I don't always carry in the same location. But that does also mean that if you're used to using a safety, always use the safety, because when you grip your gun, you're gripping the gun in such a way that you are able to, at the same time that you're pulling the gun, you are disengaging that safety. If you're not used to using a safety and you suddenly start carrying a gun that has a safety and you don't practice drawing while disengaging that safety, you're going to try to pull the trigger and you're going to get nothing, not even a click, because your safety is on. Well, that's not a risk I want to take. So some of my firearms come with safeties, some of them do not. Therefore, I carry with my safety off. That's my personal preference. I also carry hot because for me, it takes too much time as I'm drawing to rack the slide, and it also prevents me as I'm drawing from the second my hand snaps that gun to be perpendicular to my body out of that holster. It should be pointing at the threat so I can fire at any time. If I have to rack the slide, I can't do that. So I'm hot. Well, I don't want to put a hot, unlocked gun into a purse where other things can bang it. And if my gun is unlocked and it's hot and my child gets into my purse and they pull the trigger, there's absolutely nothing there to stop that gun from going off. I carry. I have a 3-year-old son. Accidents happen, but I am intimately aware of the right side of my hip. I don't carry him on that side. Ever. I never really did. I mean, it's kind of uncomfortable for me to do so anyway. I always pop my hip out to the left-hand side. Ladies, you know what I'm talking about when you kind of pop your hip to carry the weight of the child and then your back hurts all day. And I also do not allow him to play or pull or tug in that area. If he or anyone comes anywhere near the area where I am carrying my gun, I feel it. It's like when somebody walks up behind you and you sense them, even though they aren't quite touching you yet, the change in air, all of that, you become intimately aware of that part of your body. So he's not allowed near there. That and all of my holsters are retention holsters. So it's going to require some upward force to get the gun out of the holster. Now, that does not mean it's not possible for this to happen to me. Anything is possible. I just feel it's less likely. And it's something I want you to think long and hard about. So the links to the articles on this will be in the show notes. Again, my prayers and my condolences, my deepest sympathies go out to the father and husband, and go out to the family, because this is just such a tragedy. So I posted up a couple blog posts up at bullettalkradio.com I'd like to mention to you. The first one on my list is taking the Second Amendment fight to your state. And this comes on the heels of the success of the anti-gun groups over in Washington and versus the success here in Pennsylvania, where we've strengthened our preemption laws and are bringing the hammer down on our localities, and the success of Ohio, where at the state level the House and the Senate and the governor have come together to loosen the restrictions. But again, all of this is from the state level. And a lot of people who haven't necessarily been in the fight or who aren't quite as familiar, when they think of gun rights, the first thing they think of is the Second Amendment. Well, the Second Amendment comes from our federal level constitution, and our states have constitutions also. Pennsylvania actually has their own amendment in the Constitution that is actually stronger than the Second Amendment of the federal Constitution. It's Section 21 that reads, "The right of the citizens to bear arms in defense of themselves and the state shall not be questioned." So here's the awesome part. First, it specifies citizens. Now remember, Pennsylvania was one of the founding states. So that might give you some hints as to what they meant when they're talking about the militia over at the federal level. But they say the right of the citizens to bear arms in defense of themselves shall not be questioned. That's kind of awesome. But then also, as I mentioned, since we have preemption, municipalities and counties and other locales cannot make regulations with regards to firearms. So that means that the biggest battles for gun rights with regards to Pennsylvania and with regards to many states actually happens at the state level. And there's something else I want you to hear. If you don't already know, the NRA is not the most powerful lobbyist. The GOA is not the most powerful lobbyist. You are the most powerful lobbyist. Individual citizens are the most powerful lobbyists. They've just forgotten that. So, I wrote up this little blog post based on experience in working with legislators at the state level and working with groups who do exactly this at the state level. And I came up with some hints and tips as to how to address your concerns at the state legislature. How to contact your legislator, how to get some research and footwork done, how to present your argument. The fact that you shouldn't ignore the staffers. Let me tell you something. If you convince a staffer, you convince your legislator in so many cases. Don't write them off. So anyway, tips and tricks, read it, share it. Because this is the platform that I was politically, so to say, raised on, and I've seen it work. I've seen it work in Ohio. I've seen it work in Pennsylvania. I've seen it work in West Virginia. And guys down there in Virginia, you've got that new mayor down there that is vowing to tighten the strings on your gun rights. So you need to fight and fight hard. So share this around with them as well. It's up on bullettalkradio.com, taking-second-amendment-fight-state on the front page, or just hit the blog post link and you will see the article right there. And in my show notes, I will have a link to the article, and I also have a link to an article by the New York Times where they talk about how the anti-gun groups are really taking the fight to the state level. They have to take the fight to the state level. They don't have a choice. So that's where the battleground's going to be. So study up and learn how to be a strong citizen advocate. Next up, I did a little quickie about training classes in the tri-state area. So if you have an instructor you have trained under, or you know of a firearms school, or if you are an instructor who has classes coming up, so not a class you've taken, but classes that are coming up, I want to know about it. I want to know when, I want to know where, and I want to know who the instructor or the instruction school is. I want to come see the class. I'm not going to participate. I want to take video of the class, and I want to basically review the class. I am especially interested in classes for women. So you can find details for that, bullettalkradio.com/training-classes-tri-state-area, or under blog posts, bullettalkradio.com, and the link will be in the show notes. Next up was a daughter, a dad, and a Pennsylvania tradition. So I mentioned I went to the other side of the beautiful state of Pennsylvania to visit my father and his side of the family for the New Year's holiday with my son. And New Year's morning, Dad hands me a jacket and an orange cap, and he says, I need to go in the woods and I need to get my tree stand out of the tree. And I said, you need help? Like he hasn't done this on his own a million times. He's, well, yeah, but I want to show you something. Dad wants to spend quality time. I am so glad I went. And I tell the story in this particular blog post. He wanted to share with me, impart with me, some knowledge that he has over his many decades worth of hunting, all surrounding how he picked the tree he put his stand in this year for hunting. What made him pick that tree? And it gets down to terrain and wind direction and where he sat in the past, the research that he did across the entire ravine when he started his research for this particular seat, and how excited he was to share that with his daughter. And that was really the coolest part. Link in the show notes, or you can find it up at bullettalkradio.com under the blog post link. That's the show for this week. Plugs, if you are listening from iTunes, do me a big favor, if you don't mind. Write a review for the show, good or bad. Feedback, really, folks, feedback is golden. And some of you guys have just been hitting me up like crazy on Twitter and Google Plus and comments on the blog and emails that I'm receiving. And this is only episode 4 of the reboot. So I'm super excited and I love hearing from you guys. It's awesome. So keep doing that. Share the show via the webpage, Facebook, Twitter, Google Plus. On Twitter, at Bullet Talk Radio. On Facebook, facebook.com/Bullet Talk. On Google Plus, plus.google.com/Bullet Talk Radio. Lastly, if you like the show and you want to see it go places and you want to see it improve, then support the show. Patreon, Patreon, patreon.com/Bullet Talk. Would greatly appreciate it. And remember, 100% transparent on funds received and where those funds are being spent for the show. Costs incurred are hosting fees for the show, both for the website and for the media content. I would like to improve the technology, particularly the camcorder, for the show so that we can improve on the reviews and we can go places like I'd love to go to an Appleseed training weekend, these training seminars that I want to come out and review and promote for you folks, other product reviews, go to SHOT Show one of these days and bring SHOT Show home to you. All of those things require equipment, and so that really is where everything is going to go. So again, if that is your fancy, if you like the show, patreon.com/Bullet Talk. Greatly appreciate it. Thanks for listening, and I will see you next week.